All right, her big win for the U.S. men Saturday at the Olympics, 4-1 over New Zealand. Nice bounce back after the 3-0 loss in the opener against France. The goals came from Jordi Mihailovic from the penalty spot, Walker Zimmerman, Gianluca Busio, who actually came off injured later in the game, as well as Paxton Aronson. That's the first U.S. win at the Olympics since way back in 2008. What does it mean in Group A? Well, right now the U.S. sits second on goal difference ahead of the group phase finale against Guinea, which will be Tuesday. That's tomorrow over in France. Remember, unlike the women's tournament where third place teams can go through, on the men's side of things, only the top two advance. As we mentioned, Walker Zimmerman, one of the goal scorers for the U.S. over the weekend. His prize for that achievement, a chat with us earlier today. Walker Zimmerman, our next guest here on Futbol Americas, and he joins us, I believe, from Lyon, though the U.S. team is obviously moving around France for this Olympic tournament. Walker, let's start there with the Olympic experience. I remember when I was with the women's team in 2016 working for NBC, you almost felt like you weren't a part of the Olympics. You missed the opening ceremony. You're kind of off playing in stadiums that aren't necessarily where all the action is. What's that Olympic experience been like so far for you?
Yeah, I would say it's pretty similar to how you're describing it. You know, we talk about being in a submarine where we're just kind of focused on our thing. We're going underwater. We're focusing on our games, our objectives, and then we come up to get some air and see our family the day after the game and go back down. So that's kind of the analogy we're using right now. Obviously traveling around France a little bit, but our goal is obviously to get through this next game and keep progressing into the knockout stages of the tournament.
If I'm doing my scheduling right here, obviously the opening ceremonies are in Paris. You're in Marseille, so you can't be there for the opening ceremonies. What are these reports I'm hearing of a do-it-yourself opening ceremonies within camp with a certain Walker Zimmerman as an MC? Please, man, please. There's a lot of things about you that suggest you're coming for our jobs sooner rather than later.
Yeah, well, hopefully that footage doesn't get out there. I might be joining a little bit sooner than you think. Electric opening ceremonies from your hosts, myself, Tanner Tessman. We really just wrote 2 or 3 sentences about each player, kind of like a roast format, but nothing too crazy. And just called guys one by one, introduced them. We had our whole opening ceremonies fits that we wore for dinner that night, and just introduced everyone, and then watched opening ceremonies together as a team, and kind of had to do it our own way, which is I'm learning is pretty common amongst the teams that aren't able to go.
We got kind of a fashion forward segment here on the show, Drippin' or Trippin'. There's been a lot made of the U.S. team uniforms. What do you think of what y'all are wearing? And if there's anybody specifically who you feel like has been very able to pull it off?
Yeah, I think we're dripping for sure as a team. Kevin Paredes is obviously...
Is he a model in another life, or what's going on with this guy? You've seen the pictures, right?
He put out some glasses. I have no idea where he got those things, but they really tied the outfit together. Busio obviously enjoys his fashion. Tanner as well. All those guys, man, they're enjoying the fits, and I think we pulled it off.
Tell me about the significance of being an Olympian, because I think in other sports, it's kind of almost like a capstone on a career. In soccer, it's a little bit different. We argue about it on the show. What's the significance of the Olympics in the greater scheme of world soccer? Now that you're in the tournament, Walker, what's the significance of it?
I mean, for me personally, I think any time that you're representing your country in an international tournament, that's a huge deal. That's capstone worthy in and of itself. For these guys, for this team, this is pretty much the pinnacle of where a lot of guys have been so far. Playing the Olympics, everyone dreams about it. You mentioned, being there with the women's team and growing up, you're watching it, growing up watching these idols play, and you hope that you're doing the same for a young soccer player out there. There are a lot of eyes, a lot of exposure with these types of tournaments. So it certainly means the world to us, and we definitely take a lot of pride in representing our country.
What about in the fact that it's the first time back since 2008? And I think for you, probably personally, I'm assuming here a little bit, but having been part of one of those failed qualifying campaigns, this must hold even some more special significance.
For sure. I mean, with the age restrictions, you're pretty much looking at one chance, right? It's not like even World Cup, you're thinking like, well, it's usually one chance, but you have every 4 years, there's no restrictions. Here, it's like if you miss your window, you're pretty much not going to ever be able to compete. And so that for me has been, the sweet redemption is being involved in those home and away qualifiers against Colombia to try and make it back in 2016. And after failing to do so, being able to come back here and have another chance it really is amazing. And I don't take it for granted.
Let's get into the tournament a little bit. The opener against France. I mean, you guys hung tough for an hour, and then they broke it open. The final score maybe a little bit harsh, to be honest, at 3-0. What was your big takeaway from that game?
Yeah, I think the scoreline definitely was probably a little bit harsh. We walked away feeling that way. Felt like we could take a lot of positives from the game, had some really, really good chances to score. Looking at first half from Paxton, shot off the crossbar, that chance on the back post. With Jamai, I mean, we're looking at three really, really clear opportunities that are arguably better than the chances that they had. So, yeah, we take positives from it. Obviously disappointed in the result, but it didn't shake this team's confidence. I think we walked away feeling like we could still compete with anyone, that we actually played a decent game and, took some of those things into our second game against New Zealand.
You're very media savvy here, Walker, but I want an honest answer. There's a cutaway after the first France goal, and it's just an ISO of you. It's a slow-mo frustration ISO that the guys in the truck saw and put up. For those of us that haven't played or haven't played at a high level, what are you feeling in that moment right after that goal, especially as kind of the leader of the defense when you guys had held firm for that first hour?
Well, I think it was, knowing exactly that, like knowing that we were completely in the game, having some really clear opportunities. And it was just the nature of how the goal happened. Looking at the angle and from where that shot was and from being able to just, maybe if we could have a little bit more urgency in certain moments to get there, maybe we can block it. Maybe we can make a difference in the build up to that goal. And so that was really frustrating. Same thing, like second goal. We foul them in their box and give them a free transition. And that for me is why I think I got so upset is these are controllable moments, things that we can do better. It wasn't like they did something to break us down in that moment. It's something that we kind of self-inflicted. So that's where the frustration comes in. Anytime you're a defender and you give up a goal, you always think there's something that we could have done to prevent it. And that was certainly one of them.
What about the second game against New Zealand? What for you was kind of the biggest difference between the first and second games?
Honestly, I think it's getting on the board early. You score your first chance of the game, getting a PK 7 minutes in, following that up 5-10 minutes later. I mean, as soon as you go up in these games, you just start getting that confidence, you get the momentum, and that was the difference, is putting that early chance away and make them have to come after you a little bit. And that opened up some more space for us to get chances in the attack in our transition, and we capitalized on it in a way that we didn't really do the first game.
You've always been pretty good at set pieces, but I'm assuming here as one of the overage players against guys that are younger in a lot of respects. Do you feel like even more of a dominant target, a dominant aerial threat in this competition? Because it looked like it, certainly in the game against New Zealand.
Yeah, I do. I honestly do. I feel very confident.
You look like Shaq out there, man.
I don't know about that, but I do always have some confidence going up for set pieces, certainly with some younger players as well. And any time that you're in a competition where the opposition might not know you as much, I feel like in MLS, there's different schemes to try and prevent me from getting into good spots. And here, being able to read the defense early and know that we can probably manipulate them a little bit more to maybe get open or get some opportunities, that's encouraging. And so hopefully we can take advantage of that as the tournament goes on, but happy to contribute there against New Zealand.
Speaking of schemes, I know you got a reaction to the scheme of the tournament, the story of the tournament that's come out. Started on the women's side. Now it turns out it's being done on the men's side, or has been done on the men's side as well. The drone spying scandal for Canada. As somebody who's gone up against the Canadian men in important competitions in the past, what did you think when you saw these reports start to trickle out?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it feels kind of crazy. Like, it's almost like, how did no one really know that this was going on? Or I guess if they did, how has it not been reported sooner? But yeah, I mean, that's, I'm leaving that up for their federation and FIFA to sort out and figure out. But certainly it's disappointing to hear. You want to hear about people competing, with integrity every time they play the game. So we'll see what happens with that, but obviously it's disappointing news, and I feel bad for the women's team who had to the players who suffered that deduction in the Olympics.
How big of an advantage you think it is? That's been the other debate. It's like how much is it worth?
That for me is probably the biggest thing is I can't imagine if you put a drone over our match day -1 that you're getting a whole lot that's going to really benefit you in a way that's worth taking that risk. It's just seems very minimal for the advantage that you actually gain. I think you do a pretty good job of projecting lineups in general, pretty good job in terms of knowing the shape that the opponent's going to play. And then set pieces, you've seen a lot of tape, a lot of footage. So I don't know that there's a huge advantage. Again, it's sad to hear about, and we'll see what happens with it.
You're one of the 3 overage players on this team, and I'm curious about kind of how all that comes together. Take me to the beginning of those conversations and the decision to play with this Olympic team and kind of the team's decision to choose you. Who makes that call? How do you kind of kick that off?
Yeah, I think, that for me really started this past offseason in December in talks with Greg. Obviously, we'd had Marco for an assistant coach with our Nations League run in July, so he'd gotten to work with me a little bit. And talked with Greg. He's like, hey, just want to float something out there. We'll see how, the next 6 months progresses, but is this something that you'd be open to? Would you be willing to play in the Olympics if that's what, it shakes out to being? And I said, obviously, I would love that opportunity. I still want to compete for, spot with the first team if that's Copa America and put myself in consideration for that. But if it comes down to it and I want to, and you guys want me to be a part of the Olympics, I'm 100% down for that. And then the season started. I'd been recovering from my Achilles in the off season when this call was, and ended up having a knee injury at the end of February. And that kind of put me in a timeline that Copa would have been very difficult to get back for anyways. And then Marco came out, watched me play against Atlanta early May. We had a great conversation just about the team and about, what he was hoping to do with this team. And ultimately got invited to that training camp in Kansas City. And from there it was, match made in heaven.
What's expected of you guys, as the overage players? We think of it, and from the media, from the outside perspective, frankly, we expect the 3 of you guys, any 3 overage players, to kind of dominate at this level. Is that fair?
Yeah, I don't know if dominate's the right word. I mean, these are still high caliber players that are playing in this tournament. But I think you can look for contributions for sure need to be had, leadership, experience, all those things, intangibles and tangibles need to be seen. And so I think we've done a good job of that so far. You look at Georgie stepping up, delivering from the spot, contributing for myself in the offensive end as well. And now we got to try and make sure we can walk out of here with a 0 against Guinea and lead the defense to our first shutout of the tournament. So I think that's going to be an important factor as we move forward.
One of the big decisions here is also to step away from your club team. We see a lot of guys that might have been either age eligible or overage players as well, who the club team said, you know what, we'd rather not. For you, what were those conversations with Nashville like, and how hard is it to leave your team in kind of the middle of the season?
Yeah, I can't speak enough to how, grateful I am with Nashville and how they've handled my situation when it comes to especially national team and being released for various tournaments, and especially the Olympics, because this is one that you're right. You don't necessarily have to release the players for this. It's not in the FIFA window. And for them, it wasn't even a conversation. They knew that this was a dream of mine, that this was a goal of mine, and they were supportive from day one. So I'm really grateful. Every club situation is different. I can't speak to everyone else's situation, but I know that as a player, when you feel like you give everything you have for the club week in, week out, it's nice to have it feel reciprocated. And that's how I felt with Nashville. So it's tough to be away, especially when, things aren't going the way that we expect them to in Nashville. Being away for this coaching transition as well is not easy, because I want to be there and learn along with the guys and help create that new culture that we're going to have on the field in Nashville. But I know BJ, I know he's doing a great job getting everyone on board, and the reports I'm hearing are very positive about the first week with him.
Walker, you mentioned Greg Berhalter, you mentioned the Copa America. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you kind of for your thoughts as somebody who's been around not just Greg Berhalter, but the team for a long time under his charge, what you thought of the news of his dismissal.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously disappointing for players that I've played with and coaching staff that I've worked with to not hit goals that we had set for ourselves. We expect to get through a group stage of Copa America. We expect to compete with the top teams, and that was something that didn't really happen at that tournament. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm grateful to Greg, the staff, all those teammates for the job that we had done over the past 5 years, and obviously wish him all the best. And I'm sure that what's coming next is going to be bright for this group.
Obviously, it doesn't just come down to the coach. You watched the Copa America. What did you see that you felt was like missing?
I mean, you're always going to look at the Panama game as the one that really slipped away. I know Tim well, and just an unfortunate moment. Just a response that we know as players isn't the right way to go about things. We want to compete with our actions on the field in a smart way, and I know he knows that, and I know the guys know that, and so that's unfortunate. But yeah, I mean, right now, no sense in looking back at it. We have less than 2 years to get ready for probably the biggest World Cup that the American team will have in a really long time, being back on home soil, and with the generation that we have and the caliber that we have playing across the world, we expect to do really well in these World Cups and these big competitions. So I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic, and I have a lot of faith in the future of U.S. soccer.
Plus, Walker, you know how big the Olympics are here in the United States, even if they're not big in terms of the world soccer panorama. Coming off the Copa America, is there, pressure's not the right word, but maybe an opportunity for you guys at the Olympics to wash away that sour taste for the American fan coming off Copa America and maybe reset how people feel about the men's part of the program moving forward?
Yeah, I don't know that we feel the responsibility and weight of that. I think that maybe there's hope that could be a byproduct of us doing well, but our focus is not to redeem in any way what happened this past summer. It's to focus on our group, hopefully inspire those who are watching back at home. But we're just focused on us and focused on trying to accomplish our goals, which is advancing through these medal rounds.
To get to the knockout rounds, you got to go through Guinea. I look at the history, you look at the Wikipedia for kind of Guinea as a footballing country. There's not a lot there, but that never tells the full story. So give us kind of the scouting report and what you feel the keys to victory, or at least getting the result that puts you through, will be.
Right. I mean, this group, the U23s, played against Guinea not too long ago. I think like 6-8 months ago. Got a good result against them, but it's a completely different team. I think there's like 13 or 14 different players than were in that friendly that they had last year. And so it's going to be a new team. We obviously have seen some of their film footage from these first two games, and they're competitive. I mean, taking France 1-0 and had 2 goals called back. I mean, they're a team that's completely capable. And that's going to be the message to the group is we haven't accomplished anything yet. We have to get a result against Guinea. We know that they're a physical team. We know that they're going to be really aggressive in their tackles, and they're really good in transition with a lot of pace. And a lot of aggressiveness in that transition. So we got to be, tuned in defensively. Anytime that we're in attack, how are our countermeasures? How are we lined up against them? Can we prevent transition? And ultimately, can we get off to a good start in the same way that we did against New Zealand? I think that first goal is going to be key, and hopefully that goes our way.
And just to be clear, that was film footage, not drone footage you were watching, correct?
Film footage for sure.
All right, there he is, Walker Zimmerman, joining us from Lyon. Thanks a lot for the time, Walker. Appreciate it.
You got it.
All right, Herc, never a bad time to chat with Walker Zimmerman. Always very well spoken there. What'd you make of the interview? Anything there jump out to you?
A bunch. Great interview. He's a well-spoken individual. He's the leader you want in this young group, right? And when we spoke last about, and I'll go in little segments here. When we spoke last about this U.S. Youth National Team and what they needed from their overage players, steps up, gets a goal. Jordy gets a goal. He's obviously been a leader on and off the field for this team. He's just so even-keeled. And some of his responses are very political, and that's the way you got to be when you're a footballer. But when you asked him about Greg Berhalter and when you spoke about the measurements of those bars, those sticks, he was referring to Copa America. And I get a sense for a lot of this pool, and they're a family, and it should be this way. They think it's just Copa America. They think it's just that moment and not a accumulation of moments under Greg Berhalter. And listen, man, I've been in that situation. You got to protect yours. And I've been in that situation when the coach leaves. Coach leaves, the new guy comes in. He's going to want his players, his guys, and certain guys that were labeled the previous coach's players might be on the outside looking in. It's going to be a lot of uncertainty, and I think Walker understands that. But he's a pro's pro, and a player that I think has helped this U.S. national team at the Olympics very much.
Kirk, a win tomorrow against Guinea guarantees that the U.S. would go through to the quarterfinals. Any other result, and they'll need some help. Probably help that they will get because France is taking on New Zealand. But if they don't win, it's still up in the air. Do you think they get the victory against Guinea?
Yeah, I think they do exactly versus Guinea what they did against New Zealand. I think it's going to be a very comfortable win. I don't foresee them having any problems. And if they do have problems, they got much bigger problems than Guinea.
All right. New Zealand, of course, beat Guinea 2-1. U.S. beat New Zealand 4-1. I know it doesn't always work that way, but you start to do the math there and you think the U.S. should win and should at least punch a spot in the last 8.